at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except for placement on the agenda by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Anybody wishes to talk on general public comment? Moving on to consent items, number 1 through 20. Now opening public comment on items 1 through 20. I have no speaker request forms on those items. Going to close public comment on items 1 through 20. Moving on to, and now move to the council to see if anybody has any items they want to remove. I know that finance wants to remove item number 13, please, for separate consideration. Is there anything else? Item number 13 removed from the consent item calendar. Anybody else, gentlemen? You done talking? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda with exclusive of item number 13. A motion by Laurenti, second by Weifenbach. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 13. It's Resolution 2014-0088B, a levy assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property, and the chair will recognize following assumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to have this resolution amended to remove Charles Benson from the assessment list as he has paid his assessment.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Estes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Now we're on to consent items, non-consent items, items 21 through 29. No speaker request forms for that. Trying to close open public comment, close public comment on that items, and move on to item number 23. Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City of Rapid City, the Fraternal Order of Police, South Dakota Lodge number 2A, adjusting the pay scale for sworn personnel and creating a position for police officer level 2.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? I'll go to the attorney's office, please. Joel Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just point out, I handed out an updated draft that you should have. I would ask that this be the one that go forward to council for approval. What we did, the difference from the original draft is I added in the section that addressed promotions. It needed to be included and just added that in. Actually worked really well since the police officer 2 was in between the police officer and the senior officer. We just have or fit the promotional percentages in between those. So,
okay. So is that okay with the motion maker?
Yes.
To include that?
Yes.
Second? Okay. Any further discussion on item 23? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 24 is second reading and recommendation of ordinance 6014 regarding supplemental appropriation number 3 for 2014. Entertain a motion or open the floor. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion on item 24? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 25, introduction and first reading of ordinance 6002 to amend chapter 15.14 of the Rapid City Municipal Code to adopt 2012 International Property Maintenance Code. Motion by Laurenti, second by Estes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 26, introduction and first reading of ordinance 6011 to amend the Rapid City Municipal Code by amending certain provisions in chapter 15.20 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Nordstrom, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 27, introduction, first reading of ordinance 6017 to adopt the 2012 International Building Code by amending chapter 15.12 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion approved by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. There's something different. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 28, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 6018 to consolidate the city's vision and capital improvement funds into separate accounts within a united fund by amending chapter 3.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 29, authorize the, excuse me. Okay, nay from Weifenbach, excuse me. Item number 29, authorize mayor and finance officer to sign a settlement agreement between the United States of America and Rapid City, South Dakota under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Move to approve.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there further discussion? Do you wish to vote? Joel never, did you want to be recognized for that item? Oh, yeah. Would the motion maker like to withdraw their motion?
I'll leave it up to you. There's some changes. I don't have a Word version that I can't make any changes to it. So I'm trying to get back to the attorney for the Department of Justice. There's just some, at this point, everything I think is ready to go, except there's some grammar, spelling things that we want to clean up. And we might be able to get that done before Monday night, but I don't know if you want to look at it before we get that. I think we have kind of the substance of it.
I'd entertain a motion to continue this item for next Legal and Finance Committee. Would that be appropriate? Okay. Okay. Motion is to continue the next Legal and Finance Committee. Probably that was my screw up. I should have remembered that. I'm going a little too fast. So we will be continuing this item until the next Legal and Finance Committee as per the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, item number 21. Rapid City Hens Pilot Program. Chair would recognize, I guess, if you could step to the and identify yourself, ma'am.
Is this one on? Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Savannah Barkis, and this is my son Thane. We're going to introduce the pilot program. You all have a copy of our proposed pilot program in front of you. We're just going to quickly read through the bullets and then have a short discussion. Go ahead, Thane.
What do I say first?
So my name is Thane. Yeah.
My name is Thane,
Go ahead.
and
Read through.
no more than 6 chicken hens will be permitted per parcel. Roosters are prohibited in any zoning district. Chicken coops shall be predator-proof with a solid top. Water shall be provided to the chickens at all times. All coops must be regularly cleaned to control dust, odor, and waste, and not constitute a nuisance, safety hazard, or health problem to surrounding properties.
Chicken feed must be stored in an airtight, resealable, rat-proof container to discourage vermin. A temporary use permit is required for all chicken coops, and no more than 1 permit per household may be issued. This temporary permit may be revoked at any time. Many homeowner association bylaws do not permit chickens, therefore you should check your homeowner association bylaws to confirm the use of this temporary permit. And this permit expires January 1st of 2018. And the paragraph down below that just reiterates that this pilot program would not supersede any homeowner associations or private contracts. Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Ellie Schwezo. I live at 912 St. Andrew Street. That's a half a block from Wilson Park and 1 block from Wilson School. Do you gentlemen all have a copy of this proposed pilot program in front of you? Do you need a copy? Do you all have one? Okay. I was raised in Brookings County. My dad was a college professor. I was very active in 4-H, and as part of 4-H, we had chickens, and that's where I began my love. My husband gave me a coop for my birthday, a chicken coop, not realizing that the ordinance needed to be changed, and on Mother's Day, he gave me 24 baby chicks, assuming the ordinance was going to be changed. I've kept my chickens until just recently when the weather got cold and I need to do some traveling, so they're out in the country. Some of my 24 chickens went to different places in Rapid City, and those folks that have chickens, some of my chickens now, didn't want to come today because they didn't want their chickens confiscated. They didn't want to go public. But I felt it's important. Rules in our community have changed. Bicycle paths have changed. Seatbelt laws have changed. Downtown has changed, and I think it's time to re-look at this discussion, and we also are asking for a change today. You can't open a gardening magazine, Better Homes and Gardens, any kind of a magazine without chicken coops being on the front cover or articles being inside. The people at Lowe's this spring told me that in the past they've only had a couple publications on raising chickens. This spring they had several dozen given to the public. Even Sam's Club carried a chicken coop for in-town use. I was asked to be part of the garden tour because chicken poop is the best fertilizer there is. I said maybe we should wait until the ordinance is changed. I was asked to be part of the chicken coop tour where you go chicken coop to chicken coop in backyards because eggs are what people really want when they raise chickens. I was also asked to present at Wilson School, either bring my chickens over or could they do a field trip to our backyard? Or could I even have a coop at Wilson School, because they're very much into gardening and growing your own things, and there's teachers there that are very much into sustainability. Looking at this, having chickens in the last 6 months, I have complied with all 10 of these regulations. And at this time, I would ask that you give a thumbs up to the pilot program. And I have a list of the people that have already signed up for this pilot program. There's, would you say, 12.5, 24 people that are signed up? And I am one of them. So I would respectfully ask that today you give a thumbs up to this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Nisa Kerr, and I am an organic farmer in Farmingdale. I'm also a part of the mayor-appointed sustainability committee, new to Rapid City, and I'm also a part of the Wannabe Beekeepers. The sustainability committee has unanimously voted to be a part of the pilot program, and it also has unanimously voted in favor of the ordinance that we wish to change. I want to speak a little bit on behalf of this pilot program. Coming to the city council about 2.5 years ago, it was brought up that we wanted something with a sunset clause. I believe the mayor said, and Charity Doyle said something with a sunset clause. And this does. This expires on January of 2018. I think that's important to bring up because we've been talking about Rapid City needs education. We need to educate Rapid City onto the benefits of chickens. Well, where do we start with educating if we can't even have a couple coops? Right now, there's probably about 24 families in Rapid City that want to have chickens. They're all people that want them for eggs. They're not keeping chickens for the fun of it or for just to be a pain. They're keeping them for food, and this is what it's about. It's about food and knowing where our food comes from. I have a letter from the president of the Wannabe Beekeepers Association, and I will just read it. And it's from Thomas Allen, and he has signed on to supporting the Rapid City Hens pilot program. And everybody in the Wannabe Beekeeper has also said that they support keeping backyard hens unanimously at that meeting. Keeping backyard hens and keeping bees have much in common. Backyard bees and urban hens represent food security, the health and our environment, and the freedom to provide for ourselves in concert with nature. I believe that Rapid City Hens is a step up for taking care of ourselves. I believe that hens create gardens. It gets people outside. It gets people in nature. Those are all really good things for a community like Rapid City. I noticed today, just for the first time, the bicycles that were out front out of the parking garage, and I have to applaud that and say that's awesome, because anytime you can get a city more involved in nature and their backyard and being sustainable, that's a step up. So I would encourage you all to vote for this pilot program. We've done exactly what you have asked. We have put in a sunset clause, and we are educating. And this pilot program is about education. The next 3 years, we will have tour to coops, and we will continue educating Rapid City people about the benefits and the fun and the food that is backyard chickens. And it's not a big deal. It's just up to 6 backyard hens. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I would open up this discussion to the council. Oh, sorry. Chair will recognize the esteemed Amanda Scott.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Scott. I am a resident of Ward 4. I also am a council representative of Ward 4. I was not here today for the chicken item on this agenda, but since I am in the audience today, I don't want the participants that have been working so hard, the Rapid City Hens, on trying to change the ordinance to be disappointed. But in visiting with this, you are suggesting that you have followed and met everything, and you haven't, because there were 2 avenues that the City Council told you that you could approach in order to change an ordinance. One was trying to get a City Council member to sponsor this. To date, as far as I'm aware, and I'm letting the Legal and Finance Committee members know, as the public chair or the chairman of the Public Works Department, there is no city council representative that is sponsoring this change or this pilot program. I don't want you to be disappointed. Without a sponsor, it's not going to get voted in. The second way that you can get an ordinance changed is to initiate a vote of the public. And I do believe, because the question was raised to the city attorney, and I don't know if he wants to address that or not, but even to propose a pilot program, the best that I've been able to see is that it would require an ordinance change. We can't institute a pilot program without actually introducing it into an ordinance. So without a council member sponsor or without an initiated measure going to the vote of the people, this is probably not going to pass. And so I just want you guys to have a heads up. I realize it'll most likely go to council without recommendation today. In other words, the Legal and Finance Committee will not be making a yay or a nay. It'll go to council. We'll hear it Monday night. You're more than welcome to come and talk again, but this has been before this council for the last 2 years. And we've let you know that, yes, education is part of it, but you need to get the votes. You need to get a petition together if you're going to take it to the vote of the public, and unless you can get a city council member to sponsor it. So thank you, committee members, for letting me express that, and I'll wait, because I was actually here on another issue, and I'll wait and see if the city attorney brings it up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess.
Can I respond?
Well, I guess somebody can ask you a question.
Okay.
Comes forward. So I'm going to choose and recognize Richie Nordstrom first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions on the specifics within this proposed pilot program, ordinance changes that you're suggesting. The 3 years, where does that come from, or how do you arrive at 3 years? And the reason I'm asking that, number one, is there some scientific evidence behind using 3 years? And number two is the factor, again, going back to 2 years, is there some reason for that number coming up to begin with?
Yeah, sure. Well, it came up after having coffee with you, actually, Richie, in downtown of Seattle, Seattle's Best, and it was that if we had an expiration date of a year, chickens only start laying at about 5 to 7 months old. So if people are getting new layers, the pilot program would expire before they really had the proper amount of time to know if this was a successful, efficient thing for a family to invest in. Keeping chickens is, it's like keeping a dog. You have to invest in it. You have to have education. You have to have a chicken coop like a dog house, and it's a time investment. And so we took it from it being 1 year to being 3 years to really see for families if this is something an endeavor that they want to try. And chickens stop laying at about 4 or 5 years. So we thought 3 years was a good amount of time to know if it was an investment that they really wanted to make. And then as far as it being a pilot program, we're not trying to change the ordinance. We're simply trying to make a pilot program that is for educational purposes, with tour to coop, with a sunset clause, with an expiration. We have an ordinance that we have written, and we plan on passing that ordinance between now and that January 2018. So we're not trying to change the ordinance.
Thank you. The other part of it, just some mechanics of the process for the ordinance change, that will have to come forward, and the staff will have to take a look at it so that everybody understands, shall I say, the technicalities within the ordinance. So we want to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and everything is in the proper form. So that it will be the next step if it makes it to that next step. And then my question also has to do with, you mentioned that there's 24 or 24 families that are interested in this. Is there a general idea of where these families are located at?
In my opinion, I think a lot of the families are South Side, but we also know like Pinedale area. But they're also scattered all over. So no, I can't necessarily say that they're a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're very open to having families from all over Rapid City, and we thought the pilot program would really, I feel if you need to go down to the city building and sign a waiver to keep hens, I feel that keeps the willy-nilly people from just running out and getting hens. If you have to go fill out a form with the city and register your flock, I really think that will keep the sort of shenanigans out of people just getting chickens. That in itself is why we made this pilot program sign-up sheet. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think I'll yield the floor at this time, and I'm sure I've got some other questions for you, the group, but at this time I'll yield the floor.
Okay, Chair, Mr. Laurenti, do you still want to talk? I do. Okay. Chair recognizes Mr. Laurenti. Excuse me, Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I had a question for the city attorney, if I can, please.
By all means.
Joel, can you speak, or can you expound on that a little bit? Some of the comments made by Alderwoman Scott and the representative from Rapid City Hens on whether this would need an actual ordinance change for that pilot. Can you speak to that?
I think, legally speaking, the most appropriate way would be to at least amend the ordinance to allow you to authorize a pilot program. I mean, technically, a pilot program would still be in violation of the ordinance. However, if you wanted, as a council, to direct that we're going to approve this pilot program and direct that staff hold in abeyance any enforcement of the people who are in compliance with the pilot program, we would do that. Of course, if there was somebody that was upset about that decision, they could still argue that it isn't allowed, that you exceeded your authority by violating the ordinance. I mean, ultimately, what it comes down to is if you want the pilot program, then it's not that hard to get the ordinance changed. I mean, people aren't going to probably start new coops or things until spring. We could hold an abeyance, potentially any enforcement actions, and get the ordinance through, and then you could do it. If you don't want to do the pilot program, then there's no change that needs to be made to the ordinance or anything else.
All right, thank you. And then I have some questions for Rapid City Hens, if I can, please.
Please.
Thank
By all
you.
means.
Ma'am, I guess from your capacity, are you the official spokesperson for Rapid City Hens?
Savannah Barkus and I are, yeah.
Okay. So my question, the first of my questions is, from the media report from the individual who was breaking the law, if you will, the ordinance on the chickens, there was a part in there that said that she contacted Rapid City Hens for advice. My question to you is, was she told by Rapid City Hens to ignore the notices from the city?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And in fact, because I live in Farmingdale, I have taken many chickens from people in Rapid City that didn't know that it was illegal to have chickens, and this probably started about 3 years ago. People think it's legal. They come from Fort Collins, they come from Denver, and they don't know that you can't have backyard chickens. And so just recently, an airline pilot, his chickens were also confiscated. He was not in the newspaper, and his chickens went to the Humane Society. And I, of course, ran over and picked them up right away, and now they're at my place. Those chickens are not allowed back in city limits unless the ordinance is changed. We
Okay.
both know that.
All right. My next question for you is, because I've had some communications with Rapid City Hens, I don't know if I've spoken with you directly or not, maybe through email, but whether it was through email or face-to-face, I've always told Rapid City Hens that what they were doing with the last instruction that I heard come from the council was that this education continue. And I think that was been a good year and a half maybe since we've had the last conversation, a year, on this particular issue. And you guys have been doing a great job at that. My question to you is, why this pilot? One, why the pilot instead of the initiated measure, since you've been doing these public things? Why at those times not have petitions there to have it added to the ballot? Because you've got those people coming that are interested or maybe don't know when you're educating them, and then maybe they can sign that petition and get this added to the ballot so that all of the citizens of Rapid City can have a voice on this. So my question to you is twofold. Why the pilot and why not the initiated measure, which is what I've been communicating to your group from the very beginning?
Can you define an initiated measure? Is that voting? That's the public
Correct.
vote?
An initiated measure would take a certain number of signatures to have it added to the ballot so that the citizens would be able to vote on this particular issue.
Okay. The pilot program was suggested by Mayor Quaker with the sunset clause, and I feel that we are still in education. As far as it comes to a public vote, we are still in that education time frame with the entire Rapid City. I'm not sure, in my opinion, if Rapid City hens would get passed, if backyard chickens would. But why do we go to a vote when we haven't really felt like we have had the proper education for the entire community? This pilot program allows 3 years of education. How do you have a tour to coop when chickens are illegal? This pilot program is what it's going to take to have a full education for Rapid City. And I truly think that because it has been written in such a thoughtful way, that it's not going to be a bust. It's going to be very, very positive.
Okay, so let me ask you another question on that. If you're doing a pilot before the people have a voice, does that not supersede the voice of the people? I mean, and let me say it to you this way. Let's say you've got 12 to 24, let's say even 36 homes, which would be stretching it at this point. You've got up to 2 dozen from what I'm understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. If, say, half of those coops are in neighborhoods where people didn't want chickens, what recourse do those people have? If you can keep your comments to that question, what recourse do those neighbors have who have not voted on the issue, who are against this particular pilot?
Well, I guess what recourse do people have against dogs that they can't stand at 6 in the morning?
But dogs are legal in Rapid City.
Right, but who's to say that chickens shouldn't? How does this education process happen? How do these people get educated if they've never seen, 3, 4, 5 chickens in someone's backyard? The negativity will stay if this education from the pilot program doesn't happen.
Well,
I can't change those people's mind without actually showing them.
Let me answer that for you, because the answer to that is not to force it upon neighborhoods with a pilot program, because you will turn potential people who would vote for this as an initiated measure. And I believe, is what I have said from the very beginning, is that this education process should take at least as long as the pilot that you're proposing, which is 3 years. And you haven't been doing an education program in Rapid City for 3 years. Not that I'm aware of.
No, but we're
not
trying
outwardly. So I can't support it as it's proposed, because what you're asking to do is have council supersede the voice of the people when we have, many of us have, I shouldn't say many, at least myself and some others on this council have said, we want to see this as an initiated measure. We want to see Rapid City hens succeed by educating Rapid City and bringing people over to their side, and then letting those people decide by having it put on the ballot. What this pilot does is supersedes all of that. And it forces some neighbors, whatever the number you have right now, which is a small number, and to that, you're talking 12 to 24 homes in a number of thousands of homes in Rapid City. So how will a pilot with 12 to 24 homes actually be good for this effort when it is so very small?
Well, my question to you is, if we have all these opponents, all these backyard opponents, where are they? We've been Rapid City Hens has been filling these chairs for 2 years. If we have so many opponents, then let's have them be here and let's have them speak to it.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you that. I'm not asking you whether there's opponents or not. What I'm trying to do is tell you that the proper route for this is not this pilot program, because I believe what it will do is backfire on the very thing that you want to do. I get why you're trying to do it, because then you can say after 3 years, well, look, we've had very few problems, but that's because you only have 12 to 24 homes involved in the pilot. And the citizens will have very little interaction with what you're trying to do as far as your education. So what I'm trying to tell you is that
Neither of those
believe-
statements that you said are correct.
Well, what I'm
This
trying to
pilot
tell you,
program
ma'am,
is
I'm not
open-
asking you a question. What I'm trying to tell you is that this pilot program circumvents what you're ultimately wanting to do. And per the last direction from this council, it was to continue educating these people, except that now what you've come forward with prematurely, in my opinion, is a pilot program for 3 years, and you haven't even been educating the public for barely half that time. So I'm not asking you a question. If somebody else has a question, they can do that.
May I
I've
may
relinquished
I-
my time. Thank you.
May I respond?
Actually, no. At this point, we're going to wait till other council members talk to you. Chair recognizes Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This alludes to the question, what came first, the pilot program or initiated measure? I got to say, I was involved on this the last time I was on the council. A lot of times I revert back to my experiences back then. I educated myself. I think that's part of my job. And I spent a lot of time looking into coops. And one of the cities that I took and looked at was Sioux Falls. I took a 2-year period in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is 100 and I think, I can't remember the numbers are in here somewhere, but 100 and maybe 70,000 people. They had 29 coops. Within 2 years, they had, I think, maybe one legitimate, maybe not. I think that complaint wasn't even legitimate to what these people were doing with the chicken coops. And I understand where Mr. Laurenti comes from. Sometimes we as councilperson get a few strong voices, and I've got them coming down on me. I mean, if this council would have given the South Rapid people the opportunity to voice their opinions when they removed their waste site recycling there, as they are doing to you today, I guarantee they'd still be sitting there. The education program with the hens has been going on since, and I can't remember what year that was. Maybe one of you people can remind me, but I was on the council from 2007 to 2011, and we were at the point at first reading of a ordinance change. So I whether this needs to be sponsored by somebody or whatever, I don't know how that all came about. We make ordinance changes all the time. We had this conversation regarding ducks at Canyon Lake Park, which was the silliest thing I ever heard of. We made it illegal to feed a duck, but we're not going to give you a ticket for it. So what our city attorney is telling us is if we have the will to do this program and do this test program, I think it will allow an educational opportunity. Is there going to be a lot of chicken coops? No. If I could trade a chicken for some of my neighbors' barking dogs in a heartbeat, I'd do it. It's simply because it's, like I think it was alluded to, that the dogs are legal. Chickens are not. Chickens are legal, by the way, in Rapid City, South Dakota, so I hope that everybody understands that. It's just the fact that you have to have enough acreage to be able to make that happen. And if you have enough acreage in Rapid City to make that happen, we're going to put a rain tax on you that nobody had a choice in talking about either. So you have to have a specific amount of money to be able to do all these things. I think the acreage is three acres is what there's distances from the coop to the house and all these types of things that have to happen. So I would suggest that you would maybe get together with the council people. It takes 6 people from the 10 to vote for what you want. Initiated measure, I don't know whether it would pass or fail. I know I've gotten a couple calls, but nothing like I've gotten on the Fairmont trash sites. Nothing even close. And there's some people that are concerned. If you would mind, I could have them call someone at the hens and say, listen, you can come check this out. I'm not saying I would advocate for it or against it. I think that pilot program, was suggested back then, and I believe that's why Mayor Quaker brought it forward. He was at the council at the same time I was, and he's seen your struggle in trying to get something to happen that you wanted to have happen. So it's and I got to applaud your tenacity. I appreciate you ladies and whoever else is involved looking at the program, trying to make some changes that you think are important to you and your lifestyles. Will it affect some people in the community? I'm really doubtful that even they'll even notice. I think that maybe I know there's people in this room right now that have chickens right next to their households, and they didn't even know they probably had them in their yards and things like that. So I think there's some room there if we look at this pilot program, give it a shot. We limit the amount of people that can be in the program, and we hold them accountable and responsible. More than I can say for people and their dogs. Right now, we got the police department chasing them. We got the Humane Society chasing them, and nobody really knows what to do with them besides put them to sleep. And I would have a question for Jagaris, if people wouldn't think it was funny. For Chief, I would ask him how many, barking chickens he's had running around lately, or runaway chickens. I mean, I think it's an opportunity. I think we take a look at this, and I understand some of my colleagues' concerns about some of the phone calls they may have gotten from some people. But if we don't allow something to happen, if we don't allow something, with a long enough period of time to give it a chance, because the first year, I noticed one thing in the newspaper. As soon as the chicken thing started coming forward, we had people were all of a sudden looking around for these chickens, looking for an opportunity to bust somebody. Well, it's no different than feeding the ducks at Canyon Lake. I don't think anybody's going to go out there. If my granddaughter comes and feeds those ducks, they're going to come out there if Chief is going to send a police car out there and have somebody arrested. But so having something with a little bit of time to allow this program to see if it works or not, I think is appropriate. That way, people would have an opportunity at that time. If we thought it was necessary to bring it to a vote, you would have an opportunity to say, here we go, we got something we can stand on in Rapid City. I think that someone will probably make a motion here to move this to the council without recommendation to see what the rest of the colleagues have to say. But in that period of time, I would hope that maybe some of the people from the Hens would bring forward some information about Sioux Falls, where they're at with the program, get a hold of somebody there, ask them how many coops they have to date, how many complaints that they've had, and how many illnesses or sicknesses have been caused by somebody's neighbor chicken. I don't know that. When I did the research at that time, there was 0. I'm not saying I'm going to support your pilot program at this point, but I think if you maybe bridge that gap, and I don't think it needs to go to the point of initiated measure at this time, because we're looking at just trying to help maybe educate the public, and I'm probably going to get a few phone calls tonight from people. I did it last time when I approved the first reading because I wanted to see what you guys had to bring to the table, and I don't want to shut you down. I don't want to shut your program down. I want to see what happens. You are the people. This is your city just as much as it is your neighbor's city. So I appreciate your tenacity, and thank you.
Chair, excuse me, order, please. This is not a theater. Thank you. Chair recognizes Police Chief Carl Jagaris.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Alderman Weifenbach's question regarding our response. Thus far, animal control, code enforcement, and the police department have had various interactions. One recently with Ms. Barkus, where we did receive quite a bit of public criticism for. I just want to point out that our response is based on complaint. We are not actively or proactively seeking out violations. So, Ms. Schweiso, you can rest assured that we're not out there trying to find these violations. But when we do have a complaint, for example, from a neighbor, we do have an obligation to respond, and we do have a duty to enforce the ordinance. And that, in the recent case we attempted to do that through voluntary compliance, and in the end we had to put a little more pressure to get that resolved, but in the end it was resolved.
Thank you, Chief, and I still don't have a motion. Chair recognizes Darla Drew.
I would like to move this to the City Council on Monday night without recommendation, and I'd like to retain the floor.
Motion by Darla Drew, second by Laurenti, to move the council without recommendation. Darla, you have the floor.
I guess I have a question for Rapid City Hens. Do you have any idea if this ordinance, passes, if we allow the hens, do any of you have any idea how many homes we're looking at? How many people are looking at this seriously?
24?
I would venture that it would be around 20. Around 20 chicken coops. With the pilot program, all the coops would be registered. I don't want to put a cap on the program or to say this many families can be a part of it or not. I would just say that if they do have a flock of chickens, they need to go register them.
I would recommend, do you have a website or Facebook for helping people understand what's going on and to help educate them?
Yes, Rapid City Hens has close to 800 likes on Facebook, and we're very active on there. We're very well supported, and people can get a hold of us that way. Yes.
I would take the idea of initiated measure or pilot program to your supporters and see what they think about it. you know, just kind of fly that past them and see, whatever.
Chickens
Just-
don't fly.
They can fly for a little ways. But anyway, you know, have a poll of your supporters and, you know, see what they think about which course of action might be better for you guys. Also, you know, I do have complaints on this, but they're generally from people that are my age who grew up or were around farms and had a lot of chickens. And in that case, they are, I don't know, they're
It's a
not
farm.
clean, it
Yeah.
smells bad, you know, whatever. And so that's what their experience is with hens. So once again, education along those lines are really important because my group is the age group that votes and will be contacting me. Another way I think we could look at this, and I might be really out of line here, but I'm just going to say it, is, you know, when I used to be in charge of the Heritage Festival, we would have to put up signage to say that we're going to use this area for a different purpose than it's zoned. And so maybe, you know, for getting this program passed, we should have a zoning ordinance so that you'd have to check with every house around your neighborhood, and then you could be zoned for chickens in that neighborhood. I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but I think it would take away some of the stigma of, oh my God, we have chickens in our neighborhood. You know, and I think if that's a way we could proceed with this, it might be kind of something worth looking at. Just a suggestion. I don't think we have to, you know, delve into it right now. But mainly I just think that you should do more with your, as Steve Laurenti said, just with your awareness, and make sure those people that you're really interacting with your folks on Facebook and websites, whatever, even if that means putting up like educational videos and those kinds of things and directing people there. That would help me too, you know, so I could take my complaints and go, well, go have a look at this, see what you think, and if you still feel the same way, get back in touch. You know?
Okay. Motion is to move the council without recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This item will appear on Monday night's non-consent calendar, just for your information. That's what that means. So it will be open for discussion. Once again, I'm sure you'll have plenty of people there. So, item number 22. If I may take a moment just to reconsider item number 28 really quickly before we go on. I made a mistake in my haste, and the attorney would like us to reconsider that. Can I get a motion to reconsider item number 28, please?
So moved.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Drew. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Chair recognizes Joel Andine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I met with Alderman Estes and Alderman Scott over the weekend, and we discussed some revisions. I've also got some additional comments back from bond counsel that I would like to incorporate in the draft. I think, you know, rather than rushing it, we could probably delay it 2 weeks, and that'll give you time to, it'll give me time to make the revisions and give you time to review it properly without having to rush into it. You know, I wanted to get through first reading to get past that formality, but now that we're past that, I want to make sure that it's in the proper form before we pass it forward.
Okay, I entertain. Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
I just want to be clear, continue it for 2 weeks?
Correct.
Next legal in finance.
That's my motion, is to continue, and I've got a question.
Okay. Motion by Nordstrom, second by Weifenbach.
If I may, Mr. Chair, ask the city attorney a question.
Sure.
The question would be, on the draft that I was looking at, had to do with the number of council members on the CIP committee. That had to do with 10, the way I was reading it. And in current circumstances, we have 5. Is that an intentional change?
No, that actually is the current ordinance. We did bring that up at the council meeting. Since that is the practice, unless there's any objection, I think what I'm going to do is just in the newest draft, I'm going to amend the language so it reflects the current practice, which is to have 5 council members on the CIP committee.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion is to move to the next legal and finance committee. Is that correct? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 22, Alderman Brad Estes. Oh, sorry, Doug. Yeah, we can talk about it Monday or Tuesday or whenever.
No, it's
Motion to table. Maybe we want to table this item. Just kidding. Mr. Estes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Estes, Ward 5 resident.
sometimes.
Nothing I have to say. I have nothing against ag property. As Rapid City grows, we generally grow into land that is zoned ag. But what can happen at every once in a while is you can have land all developed, and you can have residential parcels, and commercial parcels, industrial parcels, and you can have a situation where in a given 40 or 80 acres, you can have little slivers of land, drainage features or whatever, that can be left as general ag. And what can happen, anything, you know, whoever owns it can sell it. Somebody that might be paying property taxes on it might decide it serves no purpose to them. They let it go for taxes, and somebody can buy it at the courthouse steps. Or they may have a loan on it, and the bank may foreclose on it and sell it. And what can happen is people can buy little slivers of unplatted or platted portions of general ag within town that are in a portion of town where now you wouldn't expect to have cows and horses and such. So, and we have very limited limitations in our ordinance on minimum acreage and such to have livestock in the city limits. So I'm just asking that you direct staff to take a look at this and come forward maybe with a couple fixes. There are some circumstances there in town that have come up, and I won't belabor that, but just give staff some direction to please take a look at this, because trust me, it could become a problem.
Entertain a motion to that effect. Microphone.
Direct staff to review the areas in the Rapid City limits that are still zoned as general agricultural to make sure that it's fitting for the area that they're in.
And second by anybody?
Let Brett.
I need a second first. Okay. Any seconds? Second by Weifenbach. Chair recognizes Brett Limbaugh.
Yeah, I think I understand what Mr. Estes wants. I think he wants us to take a look at our agricultural zoning and see if there are some ordinance revisions that we can make within that zone district that would put some form of restriction on the raising of cattle or other traditional farm uses that you would want to see in the center of the city. And I think there are probably a couple hundred properties in the city right now that are zoned in general ag, and it's probably not a bad idea for us to take a look at that. So I think that if Mr. Estes, if that's correct, I'd be more than happy to take a look at that.
Please.
Okay. So the motion is to do as stated earlier. I don't remember exactly the motion, but I believe, Maggie, did you get it all? Okay. Send to staff. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. Thank you. Make a motion to adjourn. Motion by Weifenbach, second by Laurenti. All in favor? Aye. Adjourned.